Good morning, everyone. Maybe good afternoon, depending on where you're tuning in from. Thanks for joining us. We're really excited to host our Youth Action Campaign Summit Showcase. We'll get started here in just 1 minute. And until we hit the road going, if you want to share where you're tuning in from, we always love to see where everybody's coming from and just drop it in the chat. Advocates included, it's always great to see where everyone's coming from. This is awesome. I see we're as far as Germany, Tennessee, Texas, Portland, Oregon. It's pretty early for our friends in the Pacific. Thanks for joining. Richmond, Virginia, nice. California, it's great to have everybody. More Texas. I feel like Texas and California are gonna be in the race to see how many people come. If you're just joining us, we're going to get started in just a short bit here. If you want to just drop in where you're coming from, we always love to see where everybody's tuning in from. Let's give it maybe 2 more seconds. All right, well, good morning, good afternoon, maybe even good evening, depending on where you're coming from. For our friends overseas, we're so glad to have you. If we haven't met, my name is Larissa Hatch, and it is my privilege and true joy to run the International Humanitarian Law Youth Action Campaign program as the program lead here at national headquarters of the American Red Cross. Again, we're really happy that you've joined us for this very special event to learn about the IHL Youth Action Campaign. And if you haven't heard of our program, it is the youth-led program that empowers youth and young adults ages 13 to 24 of the Red Cross to learn about international humanitarian law, which is the body of law that governs armed conflict to preserve humanity in times of inhumanity. And we're so grateful this program has grown exponentially because of the young people that are here today, maybe some of you as our coordinators. We know young people are led by empathy and impact, and that they care deeply about making a difference on a global scale, which you'll hear from these advocates today, they do on a consistent basis. So before we get started, I just want to share a few housekeeping items. This will be recorded, so for those of us that can't join or ever want to review this in the future, this is a great opportunity for you to learn from our advocates about this program and for future campaign opportunities. This showcase, along with all of our Youth Action Campaign Summit Series events for 2023, are all posted on the YouTube page that we have of International Humanitarian Law American Red Cross. And I believe one of my fellow advocates will just drop it in the chat, the link there. We have a playlist for our Summit 2023 Summit Series playlist. So we'll also share that at the end, of course, so you have it handy, but that's where we have all of our great events, which you'll hear about more later on in our showcase. We encourage that while we're going through this presentation to stay highly involved in the conversation. We're big on using the chat, and we love our reactions to be able to cheer on our advocates. And we also have the special Q&A feature on the bottom, because we will have a question and answer period at the end for all of our advocates to host and make sure all of your questions are answered. So feel free to use that at any time, and we're going to pull that back at the end of our presentation. So last year we had a very successful hybrid summit, which again, you'll learn a little bit about from our interns later on. And this year we were able to increase the opportunity to have every single event be youth-led. And we're really proud that we've reached over 1,200 people in over 10 virtual events. We launched the beginning of our new theme for this academic year, which is nuclear weapons and armed conflict, which you'll learn about a little bit later. And we're going to delve into this year the impacts of nuclear weapons and the important history surrounding it, which is really timely as we know with what's going on in current events. And also movies like Oppenheimer are really unpacking what we're going to be talking about this year. Advocates will educate their communities on the protections of these laws in these current world events, including learning about things like the true case study of the nuclear power plant in Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine, and the greater effects that it has on the community. Our students will be challenged to think about how they have an important role in this global discourse, and we're really excited to see what creative solutions they have, not only in this campaign, but also as young change makers themselves. Gail McGovern, our American Red Cross president and CEO, couldn't be here with us today, but she did want to share a few words of encouragement to kick off our summit showcase. So we'll start with hearing what she has to say.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gail McGovern, and I have the privilege of being the president and CEO of the American Red Cross. I am very sorry I can't be with you in person, but I am delighted to welcome you to this year's International Humanitarian Law Youth Action Campaign Summit Showcase. All of us at the Red Cross are so grateful for our remarkable advocates and youth volunteers. And your hard work over the past year has made the campaign such a tremendous success. So thank you for promoting a better respect and understanding of international humanitarian law. Because of your commitment, you're honoring the legacy of humanitarians like Henri Dunant and Clara Barton. And with all the tragic armed conflicts happening across the globe, we're constantly reminded of the importance of IHL to help protect civilians, combatants, and others who are caught in the crosshairs. And your efforts to educate others are making a very real difference in encouraging respect for human dignity and the humanitarian spirit. I also want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all the volunteers and regional coordinators that support our amazing youth advocates. Your mentorship and guidance are fundamental to continuing the success of the Youth Action Campaign. And when I think of all that our advocates accomplished this year, I am in awe. And I'm humbled to be part of an organization with such inspiring change makers. Your work has reached tens of thousands of people this year, both in person and virtually around the globe. And your work also led to hundreds of thousands of views of IHL content across multiple social media platforms. And this commitment to protecting life, reducing suffering, and preserving human dignity is at the very heart of our Red Cross mission. You've inspired other young adults to be greater advocates for humanity, and you've helped to drive critical conversations that will be essential to future generations. And I know this summit showcase is helping to prepare for the coming months, and I look forward to hear what new ideas you bring to the table during next year's campaign. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you again for your hard work and for your dedication to the IHL Youth Action Campaign. Your actions are fulfilling a proud legacy that stretches back more than 140 years. So thank you again and have an excellent showcase.
We truly are fortunate to have such strong leadership guiding us, providing unwavering support for this program and our youth. And as you heard Gail shared, these young advocates are now part of a tradition spanning over 140 years. And while the American Red Cross has a responsibility to educate the public about international humanitarian law, it's heartening to witness these advocates embracing this duty as a privilege and carrying forward this long-standing legacy. And it means so much to have our leadership help elevate our youth voices for this important cause. And with that, it is my honor to introduce you all today to Mr. Trevor Riggin. He's our President of Humanitarian Services of the American Red Cross and our distinguished guest and keynote speaker for today's showcase. Thanks again, Trevor, for being with us.
Marissa, thank you so much. It's so great to be with you. What a fantastic group of leaders that have joined the call today. I think I see there's over 100 folks who have joined. I know some of you are in groups. I can see some of the groups on the phone. I can see our ROTC cadets there and our ROTC cadets in a couple places in groups. So it's great to see so many people. I have a couple slides I want to use, but I'll start just by giving you a little bit of background on myself for those of you who don't know me. So I'm Trevor Riggin. I'm the President of Humanitarian Services. Humanitarian Services is the chapters and regions, but it's also the programmatic elements, disaster, our work with the military, our international work, and our volunteer recruitment. I've been with the Red Cross for just over 17 years. So 17 years this past April. I came in right after Hurricane Katrina at a very different time in the organization. So I'd worked in 8 different nonprofits earlier in my career. And I was kind of really struggling to figure out where I fit in the nonprofit or humanitarian space. And I held different roles. I held operational roles. I held government relations jobs. I was a lobbyist for Habitat for a while. And then Katrina happened. And I remember distinctly sitting there watching the tragedy unfold on TV, and probably like many others in the country, and maybe like you felt at different times, if you've seen other crises happen around the world, I just felt helpless. I felt like the job I was doing was important, but when something really bad happened, I didn't know how to jump in. I didn't know where I fit in helping. And I felt the same way. I remember when 9/11 happened, I felt exactly the same way. I didn't have the tools or connections to plug in and help in a way that was useful. And so I made a decision that I was going to join an organization that when bad things happen, I had an opportunity to help, that I had a role in trying to make things a little better. And so I joined the Red Cross back in 2006, doing mass care sheltering, which I didn't know a whole lot about at the time. I was more of a people person than an operator. And I've just moved through the organization, and I've had, I think, 8 different jobs over the last 17 years and learned a little bit about everything, most of that in domestic disaster. But I will say this, for those of you, whether this is your first day or 100th day with the Red Cross or 10th year, the Red Cross is a phenomenal place to grow. There are so many ways to invest in yourself, in the Red Cross, in community. You will never run short of experiences if you look hard enough in the Red Cross. There's so many ways to plug in given the breadth and scope of our mission. So with that, I am going to share a couple slides, and what Larissa had asked me to focus on, given some of the connection on your summit, is what we're doing in the climate space. And there's some elements here where I think you can plug in both as individuals, but also as youth advocates and just as general Red Crossers, because there is a role, I think, for everyone in what we're trying to accomplish over the next few years. All right, now give me a second while I pull this up. You're testing my slide sharing skills. Larissa, can you let me know if you can see that?
Looks great.
Okay, awesome. So I always start almost every presentation with this. So these are our 3 goals for humanitarian services, and they are remaining pretty consistent, we expect, over the next few years. And so it's pretty simple: our people, our readiness, and our mission. Those are the 3 big elements we ask everyone to focus on. But we are looking at this from a little bit of a different lens here over the next few years. On our people, inclusivity is really going to be a driving force for us, both in how we work together, but also how we include the community and the people who are impacted more intentionally, in how we design programs and how we think about service. Readiness is mostly what we do in the Red Cross, right? Most of what we do is we're getting ready to serve. And whether that's raising the money, raising awareness, building the resources, building the capacity, recruiting volunteers, engaging in conversation, advocating for change, all of that is about being ready to do something when we need to. And so that's our other big angle. And then lastly, mission delivery. But the big twist on this over the last couple of years, and one we're really driving hard towards now, is equity. So for a long time in the Red Cross, I think we misunderstood some of Henri's 7 fundamental principles. When he would talk about universality, there was a sense that meant everybody had to get served, or everyone had to get the same service. And from an equity lens, that's not what he meant. You could take there's a reason there's 7 and not 1. When you take the humanity principle, which says we need to serve those that need us the most right away, it really does point to a version of service delivery that is getting more help to those that need it the most, getting there sooner, getting there in the right way, and providing the right kind of service for people who are already marginalized or already starting off in a bad spot. So these are our 3 goals. All right, so I'm going to give just a brief sustainability update. Our Chief Sustainability Officer, Noel Anderson, couldn't be on the day, but I wanted to share a few of his slides. I'll go through these fairly quickly because it's not deep in my wheelhouse, but I did want to give you a quick update. So this is an interesting one. For years, I think we struggled with how does climate change or sustainability fit within our mission? How does it actually, and the reality is it fits squarely in it. Climate change is driving so much suffering in our world right now. You can look in any community in the US right now, you can see it happening. Extreme weather, extreme heat. You can see families who are marginalized on a good day, and then you add in a power outage like we're seeing in the Southeast right now with the storms rolling through. Those 2 days of power outage means they'll probably lose a refrigerator worth of food, which could mean a whole month's worth of wages they can't afford to go out and refill their refrigerator. So we need, in addition to the mission stuff I'll talk about in a second, we really decided we need to play our own part in helping to combat the impact of climate change by being more sustainable as an organization. There we go. So I probably, this is probably the group I least need to convince that climate changing is having an impact. Whether it's the greenhouse gas crisis, the pollution issues we're seeing, the water crisis we're seeing all over the US. A lot of the impact we've seen over the last probably 10 years globally is now showing up in every community in the US. Now, a lot of my colleagues globally would say, we told you it was coming. Well, it's here, right? The impact of climate change is happening. This year was the hottest on record in 120,000 years. We're seeing that impact in a variety of ways, but the story is very clear. So what are we focused on? So one is reducing our carbon footprint. So looking at our buildings, looking at our vehicles, looking at what resources we use, small, seemingly small things like how we hold meetings, how many people go to them. Really looking at the carbon footprint of every choice we make has a significant impact. Reducing our waste and increasing recycling. So we have a lot of necessary waste that comes from each line of service. If you look at biomed, every time we have a blood drive, there's waste from, people eat snacks. On disasters, people using, styrofoam clamshells, we've gotten rid of those and now moved to recyclable clamshells for people to use. So we have a lot of opportunity to reduce our waste. And then our water consumption. That's something we're being very intentional about all across the country. So a couple of things that are happening. We are looking to transition our entire fleet, but our first goal is to transition about 25% of that fleet to hybrid and electric in the next few years. And so we have a lot of pilots going on across the country. This is everything from passenger vehicles like the Toyota you see there to our blood vehicles that are moving resources. So we're looking at all sorts of different choices in our fleet, putting in charging stations at offices, all the things that you would expect a responsible agency to do. We've really started to invest a lot of money to do this the right way. And then our carbon footprint kind of has a couple elements. One is our energy consumption. So really looking at how we're running our buildings and resources, starting to use a lot more solar as we build new buildings at different places, making sure if we can be a zero energy building, making sure we can do that. Our overall carbon footprint, we've actually reduced our square footage of buildings from 12 million square feet to 9 million square feet in the last 5 years. And we're hoping to reduce that quite a bit more in the coming years. And so each of those just, as you know, just plays a huge role in reducing the Red Cross impact on the environment. And then renewable resources. So, if you're like me, you look for every opportunity you can to not buy new, not because it's always cheaper, but because it's reducing waste, right? One of the biggest impacts to climate change is actually clothing, because we're all buying new stuff all the time. And if you can buy, reuse clothing or resell clothing, really helps with that. So we're looking at what renewable resources we can go after in the Red Cross that we can take advantage of to make sure we're not adding to that pile of waste sitting in landfills. All right. Well, there's a lot of animation he put into this. Sorry. Carbon footprint I spoke to. Water consumption. So we are looking to reduce it by 20% in the next 3 years. I lived in Northern California for some time, and during the midst of a drought back in 2015, and it was amazing what the state could do. When we all put our minds to it, I think the state reduced water consumption by 30% in a year by really focusing on the choices we were making. And so we're doing the same thing in the Red Cross. Everything from the type of fixtures we put in to the type of landscaping we have of buildings that can reduce the water. All right. So I'm going to walk you through, that was sustainability. I'm going to walk you through things I'm a little deeper in, which is our mission side of climate change and the investments we're making. So here I'm going to give you a little context. So one is disasters. So, if you talk to anyone, even with people who may deny that climate change is a valid point, or they want to argue over the cause of climate change, almost everyone I speak to, regardless of where they sit on climate change, they agree on one thing: more disasters are happening. In 2022, you can see 18 different billion-dollar disasters. That's about 6 times as many as were happening in the 80s. It's about double what was happening when I joined the Red Cross back in 2006. And so the rapid acceleration of big disasters is happening all across the country. Mid-sized disasters. So I don't know if we have anybody from Vermont on the call. The awful flood that's happened up in Vermont, some of the storms that are rolling through the Southeast and Central Atlantic right now, those are happening faster and faster too. So it's not just the really big ones. It's the mid-sized events. We are standing up a disaster relief operation every 10 days right now, every 10 days. When I joined the organization, this was more like every 45 days, we would stand up a relief operation. So we are in a near constant state of operations across the country, in Red Cross words, near constant gray sky. This is a really interesting stat. So since 2013, so basically in the last decade, 85% of the country has been declared for a major emergency by FEMA, 85%. So the idea that it's not going to happen to me, or it doesn't happen in my community, or only happens in the South or the West simply isn't true anymore. It's happening everywhere, and it's accelerating. Most of that 85% actually happened in the last 5 years. And so we're seeing this just rapid pace that climate change is driving. It's costing us more as well. So if you look at that number, so over the last 3 years, the Red Cross is spending $225,000 a day on relief operations. That's year round. We're spending. That means that's $225,000 a day we have to spend, or we have to raise from donors. That we do a program. We have to get resources out in the community. This is in addition to everything we do every day, like house fires, preparedness work, our work with the military. This is over and above that amount, and it's increasing, both because we're providing more services and people need more services, but also because things are more expensive. You look at the inflation of even the last 12 months, right? The cost of airfare, the cost of electricity, all that's driving up our cost. It's driving up the need for resources for the Red Cross. 49% of minorities and low-income families are more likely to be impacted by climate flooding. They're 49% more likely to be impacted by climate flooding. As you may know, a lot of the areas that are susceptible to flooding or extreme weather are also the areas that are cheapest to live in, that are the most affordable, because the housing is cheaper there, and because fewer people want to live there if they can afford it. But the folks who are, sometimes we use the term most vulnerable. I'm actually trying to stop using that term, because I think it puts our communities from a deficit point instead of an asset-based framework. There's a great new term people have been using, which is frontline communities. So these are communities that are on the front line of climate change. They're dealing with this every day. They're dealing with the effects of climate change every single day in communities across the country. And it's unfortunately impacting people with low income, older adults, people with disabilities, and communities of color far more than anyone else. Here's a little bit of good news. So it speaks to the need, but we have increased the amount we provide families, the amount of financial assistance we provide families, by 247% just in the last 3 years. All driven by need. We started to see this extension of how long people were in shelters. Instead of it being weeks, they were in shelters for months. And so we started to add more programs to provide more assistance to families, which has been a really great thing. But when I look ahead, when I look out to 2050, which really isn't that far away when you think about it. I think 2030 was this marker we had on the horizon for climate change for a long time. 2030 is around the corner. 2050 is the new marker we're watching for. And by then, 200 million people a year will require humanitarian assistance, double what we're seeing today around the globe. And so all of these numbers, all this data really told us we have to change. We have to do something different. The Red Cross can't just keep doing what we're doing, expecting any different outcome. And in fact, we won't be able to keep up with the impact we're seeing in communities if we don't do something different. So this is our logic model. I won't read through all this. Larissa, I'm happy to share this with the team. Folks can dig into it later on. But I'll just pull out a couple of nuggets here for you. This is our theory of change, if you will, if you're familiar with that model. So you can see there in the strategy, very simple. We'll grow our capacity and adapt our mission to combat the humanitarian crisis caused by extreme weather and climate change. Two big elements there. We've got to have the resources to respond, and we've got to provide the services that people actually need to drive an outcome, not just a transition. So the first outcome is multi-tiered. We want to help people remain in their homes. If they don't have to leave for disaster, they're much better off staying in their home. If we can make sure that's a safe place for them to be, and then get the resources they need, whether it's healthcare or food or other resources in the community. We want to improve the conditions for those who are forced from their homes. This means making our shelters better, providing better resources. If you go into a Red Cross shelter today, anywhere in the country, you're going to find people who have extreme medical needs, who are suffering from multiple bouts of facing disasters. We got to improve the resources that we have available to them. And then lastly, we want to get them back into more sustainable housing as quickly as possible. It's not a good thing for anybody to stay on a cot for 2 months in a high school gym, but especially for someone who's fragile, either medically or otherwise, to move them more quickly into housing. The deeper outcome on the right is the big one. So many families, I met a woman 2 summers ago in Baton Rouge in one of the hurricanes. She had lost her home in Katrina. She lost it in Louisiana floods in 2016, and she lost it again in Laura. So she's lost it 3 times in less than 20 years. She's lost her home to a major disaster. She was actually pretty self-sufficient after the first storm, but over those 3, when I talked to her about what her life was like today, she was totally dependent on others for resources. She was deep in debt. She was deep under the poverty line. Her family was spread out because they couldn't afford housing that could house the entire family in one place. And she was kind of living day to day. That's what we want to change. We want to avoid people falling into this deep pit of despair after these climate change events where they just can't recover, and where the limited resources we can provide just simply won't have the impact because they're so deep. But we think we can create some interventions that actually change that. So the 3 activities we're going to focus on in the middle, you can see there, we're going to increase the readiness across the country, but especially readiness in communities that are impacted most often. So places like Butte, California, or Terrebonne Parish in Louisiana, places who face disasters every single year. We need to build up their readiness. We need to invest in community adaptation. So this is using an international model here in the United States to build up other agencies. So instead of just focusing on the Red Cross, we're actually investing heavily in very local agencies doing really exciting work in neighborhoods. And so we have 10 of these pilots right now. We'll add 5 more this year, where we're providing grants, microloans to other agencies. We're helping them increase their resources in the focus areas underneath of health, hunger, and housing. And then the last piece to the right is improving our own disaster response and recovery program. So this is both on the quality standpoint, so providing new types of assistance, providing more equitable assistance, long-term casework, better health services, but also becoming more efficient. You saw in the last slide the increased costs we're facing. We have to reduce those costs so that we can provide more money to families, so that we can provide more recovery services to the people that really need us, which means we have to drive down, how many people we send into disasters, drive down the cost of housing, drive down the cost of feeding, so we can do more of what we really need to do. So I know there's a lot on this slide, but I want to give you a sense of the depth of the work we're undertaking right now. But we really are starting to see some positive change. And this is a major kind of renovation, if you will, of how the Red Cross looked at disaster response to something much more outcome-based, much more social service-oriented, and very much in line with how our global partners around the world have been looking at the problem of climate change and the humanitarian crisis it's causing. From a youth perspective, there are a lot of places for you to plug in here. One is as an advocate, telling the story. I think way too often disaster impacts just gets ignored in the climate conversation. It's not at the top of people's list when they think of climate change, but it's actually the real impact we're seeing today. It's not a theoretical impact of something that will happen 10 years from now. It's happening today. If you look at the chronic flooding we're seeing now, what's become chronic flooding now in the South, some of the heat dome effects. Some of you live in Portland. You may remember the heat dome effect last year. We saw the same thing happen in Houston this year. We saw a bit in the Northeast. Those are going to be just devastating for families. Help us tell that story. Help us keep that front of the conversation, that it's not a problem for the next generation. It's a problem today, and one that we need people to join into. The second piece is helping us build up that capacity. So whether you're signing up as a volunteer yourself, helping us with readiness and preparedness activities in whatever community you're in, or just getting other people to become volunteers and letting them know, hey, you want to help with climate change? Here's a way you can actually fight it today. You can jump into this world today. And there's ways for you to do that in really every community in the country right now. All right, so real quick. So I wanted to speak a little bit to the values we're putting into this work, because this is important. I think everyone on this call would agree. It's not just what you do, it's how you do it. It's how you look at the community and how you look at the resources that our donors are trusting us with. So one is we are focused on becoming extremely community-based. We have to understand what our communities are going through in order to better help them recover from and move forward after these climate emergencies. The second one is being survivor-centric. This is a term that FEMA started using several years ago, survivors instead of clients or instead of victims, but it really speaks to the asset-based mentality when we think about communities and survivors. What do they bring to the table? Most of these people who are suffering through these disasters are more resilient than any of us on the call because they've gone through this their entire lives and often for many generations. So they've built up a process to deal with these crises, and they know how to plug in resources. They know how to take advantage of help when it's offered. And so if we can stay focused on the survivor and make sure we're thinking about them and what they need, not what we think they need, but what they need, and really listen to what they're telling us, we think we'll have a major impact. I spoke a little bit about equity before. That's a major driver, really thinking about those frontline communities, but also thinking about it in terms of outcomes. Often in disaster work or humanitarian work, we think of outputs. How many meals did we serve? How many shelters did we open? How many people did we help? You see those numbers, and that's great. It's all good things, but it doesn't always change the outcome for a family. It's a Band-Aid. And we really are starting to focus on how do we actually change the outcome where we can actually see a family come out the other side stronger and more secure. In fact, right now, if you remember the hurricane that happened in Florida last year, Hurricane Ian, we have caseworkers, long-term caseworkers now embedded, working with 360 families for the next year. We're following them every single week and making sure they stay secure in their healthcare, in their housing, in their food security. And we have money set aside. We keep helping them throughout this year. These are families who are at the very front line of that disaster. And we really want to prove that we can change the outcome for them, that they don't have to be like the woman I told you about in Baton Rouge that fell deep into poverty, that we can actually change that. Being inclusive and accessible. I'll tell you a quick story. This again goes back to Hurricane Ian. We were serving outside of Fort Myers. We were doing great service delivery. We had a massive shelter open, and we sent some teams though into a couple neighborhoods we didn't know very well, largely Spanish-speaking Latino neighborhoods south of Fort Myers. And right away, the teams called back and said, you know, they found apartment buildings full of families, kids sleeping on moldy mattresses, apartments that no one should be living in. But the honest truth of it was they couldn't go to the shelter. In Florida, often the shelters, the front door has, you know, a lot of police officers in full tactical gear screening for different things. And it just simply wasn't an option for these families to go to the shelter with that much law enforcement. And we had to change our model. In order to be inclusive and accessible, our answer wasn't come to the shelter. Our answer was, let us bring resources to you. Let us buy new mattresses for your families who are staying in these apartments. Let us get some support so you can repair the things that can be repaired. It's a different way to look at the problem, but much more inclusive of the different range of clients we serve. And then the last one, we have to become more and more volunteer powered. And it's not about saving money. You know, I used to work for several other nonprofits that used volunteers as a labor pool, right? It was a way to do the service because we couldn't afford to pay employees. We didn't have the funding. And the Red Cross, if you look at our 7 fundamental principles, if you read into what that volunteer principle is about, it's not about efficiency. It's about the spirit of volunteerism. It's about people serving for no other reason than to serve. It's about the only reason they're here. And it's much like everyone on this call. The only reason you join this effort is because you want to help people. And that is such an important part of our ethos that we want to make sure we maintain that even in this hyper state of climate change and chronic disasters. Last slide, and then I'll open it up. So this is a quote. This is one of the lesser known Red Cross leaders in our history, Ernest Bicknell. Ernest was the first paid national director of the Red Cross. He was hired back in 1906 by Clara to kind of develop what the structure of the Red Cross should look like. And Ernest Bicknell went to lead the great earthquake in San Francisco in 1906. He was sent out to run that disaster. And we didn't have any resources there. We didn't have chapters. We didn't have a bunch of resources in San Francisco. So he kind of showed up on his own. And he showed up about 2 weeks after the earthquake happened. And like we do sometimes at the Red Cross, he started bossing people around. He started taking charge. And when he finally lifted his head up, he saw that other agencies were already there. Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, United Way were already doing great work. And the community itself was already doing great work. And he came back and he really said, we have to change who we are as an organization. We can't show up after the event. We have to be there all the time. and we have to be someone who's embedded and integrated in the community. So if you look at the bolded parts here, and this applies both to domestic and international, our community should feel like they have direct access to the highest authorities of the Red Cross. When they speak to an executive director or a senior volunteer in their community, they should feel like they're speaking to a senior leader of the American Red Cross, someone that can make a commitment on behalf of the organization, and that when they say help will come, it will come. We try to put tremendous authority into our regions and chapters to make this a reality, but it's something we need to continue to develop. The bottom one is equally as important, though. Ernest really saw we have to be a local organization first with powerful outside connections. And often we talk about the Red Cross in an upside down fashion. We talk about ourselves as a giant NGO that just happens to have local chapters. And the vision was always the opposite. The vision was always that the Red Cross was community and local first. And then we leveraged this amazing network we have across the country, around the globe. And this is something we're trying to move quickly back to as a part of that original vision that Ernest came up with. All right, so I'm going to back out of this so I can see some faces. Oh, there you guys are. So anyway, that's just a few highlights from going through. Again, I so appreciate the work that you all do, just the willingness to even to engage on a call like this, to be a part of the conversation. It's making us better. Youth and youth advocates have been a big part of pushing us to develop a climate strategy, to rethink our stance on climate change, to change the terminology, to really push for climate change to be a part of who we are as an organization, to be an advocate for others who don't have a voice. Youth are driving much of that sense in our organization. I would ask you to keep pushing, keep driving, keep challenging the organization to develop and change, because you're making a big difference.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you so much. I don't know if you can see, there's so much support and love, the clappings. I love how Zoom just shows how we're all one big community. And I think when we talk about volunteerism and commitment, it's summer for our youth advocates, and this is what they're choosing to do. I know some of our students are going to college in a couple of days. Some of them already started school, and they spoke with their communities to say, this is important for me to be a catalyst for this change as the Red Cross. So it means so much to us to see how the Youth Action Campaign is embedded in that opportunity to be part of the mission and part of this global movement in such a powerful way. And I'm sure here there's future Red Cross leaders in different ways. And I'm just really excited to see, what comes from this group. But we can't thank you for your support of this program and our youth in general. Thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Well, enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate it. And we're just, again, so grateful to all of our leaders. We've had great opportunities. You'll hear later on today, we spent some time with some of our other senior leadership to hear how they view IHL as part of their mission and the Greater Red Cross mission as well. So it'll be fun to kind of unpack those together. But our youth volunteers have really evolved into youth leaders. And as I shared throughout the entire summit series, every event was youth-led, and today's is no different. As soon as I pass off the baton, you won't hear from a single adult until the very end, when we hear from all of you and we hear your questions and thoughts about how we can make this program better and how we can help you. And I am so proud of this group of advocates. Like I said, they are committed through and through. They were here with us in DC last week, and they were here with us virtually for over a month to be able to tell the better story of what IHL is and how important it is for these protections to preserve humanity. There will be some opportunity for interaction, so be sure to have, if you're on a personal device, a computer, or a phone, have your fingers ready. We're going to definitely make sure you're engaged throughout. I again want to thank Gail and Trevor for being such strong supporters of all of our youth and this program. And with that, I am thrilled to pass it on to our first team of presenters representing the North Central Division. Take it away, Payman and Rebecca.
Thanks, Larissa, and thank you, Trevor, for the great presentation. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon. Today we'll be presenting on International Humanitarian Law Youth Action Campaign in the North Central Division. I'm one of your hosts, Pema Rajai, a rising sophomore in Chicago.
And I'm also one of your co-hosts, Rebecca Lee, and I'm a rising senior from Indiana. We also have Katie Carpenter and John V. Ramikar from our division, and we are presenting on their behalf as well.
We will now go over our agenda for today.
So to start off, we already gave our introductions. Then we'll share some stats with you all and then go over our general campaigns, how our campaigns have grown, as well as some advice for the following year. So our region, the North Central Division, it includes Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, the Dakotas, Nebraska, and many other states. Our advocates are from Michigan, Indiana, and Illinois specifically. And to explain the depth of our reach, we were incredibly successful. The North Central Division reached over 5,000 people, 5,074 to be exact.
Indeed. We had about 105 campaigns, over 180 advocates in this effort. Over 5,000 people were reached, and almost 27,000 people were reached through social media. Some common events include presentation at different schools and school-sponsored events relating to international humanitarian law, including debates and things like culture fair presentation.
We also had campaigns like challenge courses, video campaigning at high schools, as well as some situation games. For example, Carmel High School took part in these campaigns in the Indiana region. Our team consistently discussed IHL, its impacts, and its connection to the environment every single club meet we had every month. And we presented about IHL at a culture fair at our local library. We reached an audience of all age groups, and they all seemed really intrigued about IHL, which is amazing. And to further gauge interest, we hosted an art contest asking participants to draw the connection between IHL and the environment, which they also really enjoy doing.
We all had some common goals, whether they were related to numbers of people. To start off, one of them was trying to reach every age group in our campaign. To elaborate, reaching from up to 10-year-olds, 11 to 18-year-olds, and then the older generation. The next one was on an emphasis on the younger kids, such as middle schoolers. Many of us on this presentation and even in our division utilized our local middle schools and spread the influence early on. For instance, in my campaign, I, with other youth refugees, created a challenge course that aimed to educate people across all generations and engage them into understanding international humanitarian law.
And to go back to that common goal, I want to bring up again my example from the Indiana region. My team at high schools was to reach around 80 people in one of our campaigns, and we actually ended up reaching over 500. And lastly, we just wanted to highlight another campaign, and this one's from Decatur, Illinois. They hosted a scavenger hunt to draw in more than 1,000 participants, which is really impressive. We hope that these event examples give you some ideas on how to utilize and carry out your campaigns next year.
Obviously, with the new age, utilizing social media in our campaigns only made our reach even better. All of us, including, as you can see here, most of other teams in our division utilize social media to spread the message. We know that executing these campaigns can be challenging, but we found that consistency and perseverance are always core values to keep in mind and apply when you face adversity throughout the year.
And some adversities that we faced throughout the year, including gaining an active audience, but we learned that constant outreach and awareness of community events as potential venues for these IHL campaigns can definitely help overcome that barrier.
We also wanted to share some specific points of advice, such as not procrastinating, start early, and knowing your audience. What I mean by that is you can't present to middle schoolers versus the same way you present to high schoolers. You have to adjust between middle schoolers and high schoolers. And don't be afraid to speak out to an admin about a new idea you want to implement. What's the worst that can happen? Thank you so much for joining us for this showcase. Now it's time for a quizzes to see what you've all learned. So let me drop the link into the chat where you guys everybody can join us. Wait, sorry, I'm not so great with that's the link to join our I'm gonna give you guys about 60 seconds to join. Wow, I feel so I don't know, blessed or honored to see so many names and the energy that like every single second there's somebody trying to join in. It's just amazing. It's just phenomenal, you know. Okay, about 15 more seconds.
It's great that we're seeing lots of participants, especially people who haven't presented before. So this is amazing. Thank you so much, guys.
And now 5 more seconds. All right, we're gonna start right now. If you didn't join, it's all right. You guys can watch others. It's fun game. All right, the question was, how many people did we reach? Rounded, it's 5,100. Some people might have clicked 5.100, but that was a trick. All right, the next question is, how many people did we reach through social media?
And remember to round on this one as well.
Yes, it says rounded. All right, we reached 27,000 people. Arushi's taking the lead. All right. Next question is, what event North Central Division did not host? This is did not. Okay, let's see who's in the lead.
Haley's in second, Arushi's in first. Awesome.
Yep. What is not one of our piece of advice to you? Do not procrastinate. That's one thing I struggle, and then I have to tell myself every day. All right, Arushi State is still taking the lead here. And then the last slide, it's not a question, it's a slide. I want to say thank you for your hard work. By just staying here, you really make us feel blessed. So now I'm gonna pass it on to my ROTC fellow advocates. You guys can steal the show.
Hi, thank you, Payman. We are the Granger Grizzly Battalion from Granger County, Tennessee, and we would love to introduce ourselves. So I'm Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Wachtel.
I'm Cadet Major Hedge.
I'm Cadet Sergeant First Class Weaver.
I'm Cadet Sergeant Lowe.
I'm Cadet Corporal Amabile. I'm Cadet First Sergeant Reyes.
Okay, so this was our JRTC International Youth Action Campaign competition. Unlike the other advocate teams, our campaign started as a service learning project for our battalion. So service learning projects in ROTC are an annual active and experimental learning technique where students have a direct impact on an identified need that interests and motivates them. Every student in our battalion will participate and learn skills like how to develop and manage a project, and of course, leadership skills. SMART goals are a big part of service learning projects. Overall, these projects help students develop many skills that are applicable in the real world, which is exactly what JROTC is about. This year, we partnered with the Red Cross for our project, participating in the Red Cross's JROTC Youth Action Campaign competition. So this is a brief overview on our next slide over our timeline. And from start to finish, we took about 4 months. It got a little crazy and we had many other battalion events to organize, and Cadet Hedge and I actually made the bulk of our project campaign report in Starbucks, and we submitted the final project in the bed of my truck.
So I'll now introduce you guys to our campaigns. So we had our battalion campaign, our ROTC campaign, social media campaigns, and Granger High School campaign. So once we finished these campaigns, we included them in our project summary report. A big benefit of this program was the ability to coordinate and develop. It's given us the opportunity to be in a professional meeting setting with our Red Cross regional director at the time, who was Travis Burchett, and then also coordinate with colleges and teachers in our school to set up dates to distribute pamphlets and talk about IHL. It also allowed for staff development. In JROTC, we have our big 3 and then our 5 coordinating staff officers, and we all run the program. It's very youth-led. So it gave us new opportunities, experiences, challenges as well. Cadet Weaver will now talk about her experience with the pamphlets.
For our service learning project, the battalion did pamphlets on environmental conflict and how IHL helps during and after the conflict. As a battalion, we split 70 cadets into groups of 3, making around 24 groups. Each group got to decide what conflict they wanted to do their pamphlets over and had multiple days to research and design the pamphlets. Each pamphlet was required to have a spot for a QR code, which led to a survey for anyone that had seen the pamphlet. Our group, Immobile, Lowe, and I, won the battalion campaign with our pamphlet that Lowe is going to talk about now.
In our pamphlet, we chose to talk about the Vietnam War, specifically Agent Orange and napalm. These chemicals destroyed the environment and are still affecting the environment today. We talked about how IHL helps with the damage and helps the people that had to live in the environment. This is our pamphlet.
Another thing that we did to expand our campaign was traveling to local colleges and universities such as Walter State, Carson Newman, and University of Tennessee. At these places, we were able to talk with ROTC instructors and cadets about our pamphlets and IHL. We wanted to use this opportunity to further spread awareness. We had distributed our pamphlets to the ROTC classes, and they helped distribute them across the campus and community. As a group, I felt that this was a very helpful and a key aspect of growing our campaign. It also allowed us to get better at our public speaking skills.
Another big part of this Red Cross Service Learning project was the social media aspect, which I was in charge of. Not only do we have 1 post up, but we have 3. With a caption picture post saying, those were the 3 rules I would follow. Picture. I would try to take pictures of any little thing we did, from even learning what the Red Cross was to talking in front of ROTC instructors, trying to get the moment in picture. Caption. I would try to write an article about what we did. It would usually take me around 20 to 30 minutes. It really depended on what we would do. Then I'll send it to Cadet Hedge or to my assistants to finalize the article, to see if anything needed to be added or if I had any grammar mistakes. Post. I would try to make the post the day of or the week of. And something really cool that happened was the 7th Army Brigade posted us on their Instagram story and on their Instagram page.
Part of our outreach was going to classes in our high school and taking 5 to 10 minutes to pass out pamphlets. We went over them and had conversations about IHL and its impact. As mentioned before, the pamphlets had a QR code, and we used these as a way to gauge our success and receive feedback from people we reached. We had 3 questions, and the first was, have you ever heard about IHL before? And 70% of responses said no. Another question was, will this spark a dialogue about IHL between you and your family or peers? And 70% of people said yes. We added a short response section and asked, if you learned anything, feel free to let us know. And these were some of our favorite responses. It was mostly just a lot of people saying that they're glad IHL is in place and saying they're interested to learn more about it. And that to us means that we reached our goal. And now I'll pass it along to Cadet Hedge to close us out.
So this is our Granger High School battalion that participated in the JROTC Youth Action Campaign. Thank you for listening to our presentation. We have automatic lights, so saving energy. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Before we end, we'd like to do an interactive activity. Our idea is to have each one of us cadets name one of the 7 Army values that we had to incorporate into our service learning project, and then have anyone leave a comment and share what that word means to them. So the Army values make up the acronym leadership, which is spelled LDRSHIP, and with the first word being loyalty, if anyone would like to leave a comment on what that means to them. The definition of that is a strong feeling of support or allegiance.
Duty, which means fulfill your obligations.
And respect, which means treat people as they should be treated.
Okay, so selfless service is an important leadership acronym part. So it means to put the welfare of the nation, the Army, and your subordinates before your own. So if anyone wants to leave comments about these.
Honor. Honor is a matter of carrying out, acting, living out the same 7 Army values in everything you do.
Integrity is my personal favorite. It's doing what's right legally and morally.
Personal courage is one that I quite like because I like working on it a lot. It's facing fear, danger, or adversity physically or morally.
All right, thank you all for listening to our presentation. We'll now pass it on to the next presenters.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm having a bit of a technical issue here. Apologies. Hold on just a moment. Apologies. Okay, there we go. Now we're okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you to the JROTC team for that wonderful presentation. My name is Franco Morales, and I will be talking about the Southeast and Caribbean Division. Before we begin, though, I would like to take a moment to introduce me and my co-presenters. Greetings, as I have said before, my name is Franco Morales, and I am a rising senior in American Academy, Puerto Rico. I've been involved in the Youth Action Campaign for 2 years now, and I'm super excited to have been and still working on this project with everyone.
Hello, my name is Irishi Gupta, and I'm an advocate from the Georgia region. I'm a junior at Alliance Academy for Innovation. I've been a part of the YAC program for the past 2 years and have absolutely fallen in love with it.
Hello, my name is Ethan Wan, and I'm a rising junior at Green Level High School in North Carolina. This is my first year in the Youth Action Campaign, but I'm passionate about protecting the environment through IHL. So just for a quick overview, on the screen we have highlighted where the Southeast and Caribbean Division is. We cover 7 states in the contiguous Puerto Rico and United States region.
Taking a look at our in-person engagements, we had over 5,500 engagements. The engagements were relatively spread out among most regions, but Tennessee had a much higher amount of engagements, with about 40% of the division's engagements coming from there. Shout out to all of our Tennessee folks out there. Our division goal was initially 5,321 engagements, and we not only met it, but we exceeded it.
We had over 4,000 virtual engagements, with Central Florida having the vast majority of them. Over 50% of the division's engagements came from there. Shout out to all of our advocates joining from teams in this region. Our first campaign spotlight is Neo City IHL, a team from the Central Florida region. This team hosted an IHL dodgeball event. They simulated Army actions by having military personnel Try and attack the other team while avoiding civilian objects. The second campaign we would like to mention is Palmas Academy's Youth Action Campaign. They visited Playa Flamenco Culebra from the Puerto Rico region and conducted an investigation on how it was used as a place for military training exercises and how it is affected by them today.
So the final campaign that we would like to highlight is a team from the North Carolina region. Team 2 is from East North Carolina Youth Action Campaign. In this campaign, Team 2 hosted an online bingo event on IHL, which involved educating the audience on the principles of IHL.
Next up, we have our own campaigns. My campaign, Humanity Exists Everywhere, a campaign from the Georgia region, was primarily social media based, featuring YouTube videos, Instagram posts, and blog posts. We also hosted a variety of events, including speaking to 8th graders, guest speaker events, and Mafia Week.
Campaign for a Better World was focused primarily on in-person activities that could better impact any audience with interactive questions and games while using social media to spread awareness of IHL.
So finally, for my team, East North Carolina Youth Action Campaign Team 3, we did a virtual Kahoot and simulation event. This event evolved an online IHL Kahoot event and an interactive simulation event. Through the Kahoot and simulation, the audience was able to have a fun interactive experience while gaining a better understanding of IHL. So during the course of our campaigns, we encountered some challenges. First of all, many teams, including my own, struggle to host and plan large events for many reasons. But quality matters more than quantity. It's great to talk to hundreds of people, but it's more meaningful if you have impactful conversations with a few people and then they go on and spread their new knowledge. On some occasions, there will be things that will go wrong, such as fewer people showing up than expected, a presentation freezing, or a microphone malfunction. In these cases, make sure to stay calm and professional to find a solution. So this school year has been busy for many in regards to planning and conducting activities and events for students. This made it difficult to plan and host some campaigns' own events without conflicting with school activities. Through cooperation and compromise, however, they were able to find dates and times suitable for their campaigns.
For advocates who participated this year and will continue in the future, or people wishing to join in the future, we leave you with a few pieces of advice. Plan ahead, connect to current events, and work with schools, nonprofits, and local groups. Planning ahead is critical for the success of your campaign. You never know what last-minute emergencies can come up for you or your teammates. So planning ahead will account for that. When you connect to current events, you are connecting to what people already know. IHL is relatively unknown, but people are aware of famous wars and are often aware of current events. Instead of teaching them a new set of laws and a new obscure example, focus on what they already know. If you're having a challenge in finding an audience for your IHL campaign, a good way to find one is to reach out to your local schools, nonprofits, and local groups. These groups will often be supportive of your campaign, which will generate a good audience to be educated on IHL.
We leave you with a quote by Pericles. What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone, but what is woven into the lives of others. Before we go into what this quote means to us, what do you guys think this quote means? Type it in the chat. I want to see your comments. I'm gonna wait a few minutes here. Rebecca says, the chat is moving a bit fast. I think this quote means And I think this quote means that you can have that you can have a lasting impact on other people. I like that. Very good. And how does your work change experience? Pronounce your names. Everlasting impressions. I like that, Tanisha. The impact you have on others is most important. Yes, yes. I like that. Miranda, our work on lives. Yes. Well, I'm gonna read one last one before we go and move on. And I'm reminded of the people remember what you said, but how, not what you said, but sorry. Say that. My bad. Yes, I love that. I love that quote. Now, what this means for us is that we believe that this captures the essence of what IHL YAC is all about. It's about advocating and making a difference in people's lives now and in the future. Our impact may not be known. The Southeast did just that. Thank you for your time today.
So now we pass it on to the Northeast region.
So, hi everyone, I'm Arjun Bindra.
Hi, my name is Chalu. I'm in a rising sophomore at Sharon High School in Sharon, Massachusetts.
Hi, my name is Ellie, and I'm a rising senior from the Greater New York region.
So today we're representing Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. So a lot of regions. And I just wanted to go through our common goals throughout a bunch of the campaigns throughout our division before we get into it. So some of the qualitative goals we had are increasing compassion and increasing equity. We found that to be really important, especially coming out of the pandemic, and then increasing community engagement. Some of our quantitative goals included raising 1.5K in fundraising for each campaign, having 3 POC-led events to increase diversity, and 2 project proposals and 3 global outreaches.
One common thread between our campaigns was informational sessions, which often went hand in hand with fundraising events. Arjun was able to raise 4K. Ali went to our local library to present about IHL, while my club went to world history, world studies classes, a class that 10th graders take exploring armed conflict. And our slides got to be part of the curriculum because of the relevancy. We also went to our local middle school.
Trying not to think it for a while. It's like Corey on time.
The next slide would be I think the slides paused, but it's okay. Yeah, okay, there we go. Another way we raised awareness was digitally. Ellie's team did a Fun Fact Friday campaign, sharing information, for example, about Claire Barton through Instagram posts. I also took a similar approach with my team, but we used Instagram stories to create a 20 Days of IHL series, sharing basic definitions and real-life examples. We also made and distributed cards to veterans to share our thankfulness for their service, dealing with the consequences of armed conflict on a regular basis.
For future groups, we have a couple pieces of advice, and here's how we recommend structuring your campaign next year. One of the most important parts and often the most tiring part is fundraising. So leaving it towards the end of your campaign could lead to low results or outcomes that you may have not expected to be as low. So keeping it a priority is super important. Another classic way to structure your campaign is to incorporate presentations like the informational sessions we talked about in the beginning. It's a great way to educate the community, although it can get a little boring. So using presentations to engage your audience is super important. And we recommend inviting guest speakers and tying in the presentation to that year's theme so your community can become more passionate about it. One final way is that because although teaching and fundraising can create an impact, the real change happens when the communities come together to create their own solutions. So we recommend hosting project proposals, proposal competitions, and possibly rewarding your participants with volunteer hours to engage the community a little more. Okay, now let's put our stats into perspective. This year, we were able to have 5,124 participants. We overall raised over $6,000 in fundraising and held 79 events. Thank you. And now we were the Northeast region, and we'll pass it on to the Swarm division.
All right, so hello everyone. Thank you so much for sticking with us thus far. We're super excited to get started with the Swarm division, which was the division that us, the presenters, were part of this year, and we are very honored to be presenting this on behalf of all of the advocates and campaigns from this year. So just for a quick introduction before we get into our presentation, my name is Ambasha Sharda. This is my first year with IHL YAC. This past year, I served as field ambassador of the Kansas, Oklahoma region, and I'm based in Manhattan, Kansas.
Hi, my name is Anika Nair. I'm 16. I was the social media lead for my campaign, and I'm based in the North Texas region.
I'll go ahead and also introduce our fourth teammate who couldn't be here today, unfortunately. Her name is Selena. She's also 16 and also based in Plano, Texas.
Hi, my name is Lipika. I'm based in Frisco, Texas, and this is also my first year in YAC. And I was a team lead for the team this year, and I'm also going to be a future YAC coordinator.
So before we head into the content of our presentation, we're going to take a quick overview of what we're going to discuss today. So firstly, who we are, what the Swarm division is, what our reach was this year, how many people we interacted with reach this year, what our campaigns look like, so a little bit about the events that each of our campaigns held, some new ideas, new patterns that we saw for you guys to implement next year, and then some advice as well for you guys to take with you from our division.
So we are the Swarm division, or the Southwest and Rocky Mountains division. We're comprised of states such as Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Texas, Kansas, and so forth. We are the largest division by geographical area. And now onto our reach. So we had about 300 events in total and 11,509 participants.
And now on to some new and trending events that we did for our campaigns this year. And some being in art contest. This was just kind of a way to like get your teammates to kind of engage with your campaign while also being creating and having that fun aspect. And as you can see with these wonderful stickers, you can see right through it. Another thing that we did was do discussions, and discussions that can include going to conferences like my team did in this picture. We went to the EarthX conference, and you discussed a lot of topics about IHL and etc. and environmental conservation, doing webinars, and just like such discussions really bring the engagement point in. And then some other patterns that we observed throughout our campaigns were presentations, and hosting presentations to your schools about the environment, or just local areas where you can really inform the audience. And then also doing collaborative events where you can collaborate with organizations in your schools and other clubs to really get that engagement going and find that common ground, and doing fun events in parks and such like that.
So Lipica mentioned common ground, which was a core theme in this unique event that my campaign actually held this year. Our high school has a very, very cool club called Civic Engagement Club, whose focus is to promote civil discourse in community settings to find common ground. So this discussion was focused on this year's topic, which has already been mentioned, but was the environment and armed conflict. And so different community members from different backgrounds, different ages, all came together to decide and discuss some actionable items that they can take as a community to implement and educate on this year's topic.
So yeah, like Lipica said, another common pattern we saw were collab events. So my campaign, Humanitarian Heroes, we collaborated with another IHL team called Nature of IHL, and we discussed IHL and the environment at a local park. So participants were able to learn about the principles of IHL, help in a cleanup scavenger hunt, and learn about the work of veterans in our community by walking around and seeing the commemorative monuments in the park.
Another unique event that my team got to do was do a dual event where we got to do a fundraiser and also do a podcast with a charity that we collaborated with named One Jima Charity. They're based in Uganda, and we talked about during the podcast episode about IHL and the policies, and we also got to discuss what Uganda has to offer in terms of scarcity with water sanitation, corruption and stuff like that. We got to really educate ourselves, and then we were able to do a fundraiser where we raised about $200 with this bake sale to really give back to their community, and we were able to fund their organization.
So now we're going to take a quick look at our growth this past year, which has just been absolutely amazing. In 2020 to 2021, the campaign saw about 29,000 people reached, or combined with interactment. So the numbers that you see here are a combination of people that were reached via social media, views on Instagram stories, maybe they submitted a form from a QR code, things like that. And we've raised that number this year to almost 72,000 people, which is absolutely amazing. And just for some perspective, the 2019 to 2020 campaigns were about 2,000 people. So we have grown exponentially over the past 4 years.
And with this wonderful growth, there's obviously obstacles that we have faced through when we're doing our campaigns, one being engagement. And, when you're creating these teams, when you're creating these events, it's really hard to get people to, engage with these events. So you got to make sure that your events are interactive and engaging to have that component again. And then another problem was also problem solving. Problem solving is another thing with teams when you're really, creative with your ideas, and you all have a lot of ideas and very biased towards things. You have to push through that and really just solve through and have wonderful events for your team. And then last but not least, attainable goals. We all want to make goals that are reaching, wonderful outreach and having that big goal, hosting big events, but also you have to think about, how to host events that are attainable and that you can reach and you can do.
So just some advice for all of you campaigners looking to become a part of IHL this year. First of all, because last year's topic was focused on the environment, we really tried to implement that in our practices as campaign managers or leads. So, sustainable practices, being eco-friendly, energy efficient, things like that. So this year going forward, try to incorporate the topic in the way you hold your campaign as well. And then when it comes to functionality, making sure you're communicating effectively, involving everyone and listening to everyone's opinions is always important. But also the impact of your campaign is largely dependent on how many people you can reach, right? So marketing your campaign and your work especially is also very important.
So this year's campaigns saw a lot of growth and plenty of new and interesting concepts. So we saw about a 57% growth in the last year and 143% growth in the last 2 years, which is very impressive. We also saw some positive problem solving to approach various issues and polarized views. Yeah.
All right, so just before we round our presentation out, we'd like everyone who's here on the call today to just type in the chat a new idea or a cool idea, an event idea, anything they saw in our presentation that they thought was interesting and would maybe like to input in their campaign next year. So yeah, just go ahead and drop those in the chat if you have any ideas or like I said, any events that you thought were really unique and would like to implement. This could be literally anything, whether it's civil discussion or park tours. Yeah, collaborations were a big part of all of our campaigns this year. So nice. Social media campaigns. IHL Games Day, that sounds really interesting. Yeah, and the topics are always so diverse that there are so many things that you can do. So really be creative with it and have fun with your campaigns. So I know we all had fun with ours. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to our presentation. It's an absolute pleasure to present to all of you. And we're going to go ahead and pass it to the Central Atlantic region.
Hey everyone. Hello and welcome to our showcase. We will be presenting the Central Atlantic Division. Next slide.
Hi everyone, my name is Fatima and I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a rising junior and this is my first year of being part of IHL YAC program.
Hi everyone, my name is Aris Bujima. I'm 16. I'm also from Ohio, Cincinnati. I'm a rising junior and this is also my first year at YAC. This is our friend Nikita Minhaj. She's 18, also from Ohio, Cincinnati, a rising senior. She cannot be here due to CCP classes, so we'll be doing her part. Okay, let's start with what is the Mid-Atlantic? The Mid-Atlantic is a region of the United States located in the overlap between the Northeast and Southeast state of the United States.
So we first began by making a TikTok video March 23. We made over 3,000 views, but we're going to talk about it later on the next slide. We also went to some universities like Xavier, Cincinnati, Ohio, and spread the knowledge that we have to everyone that was interested. Next slide. Okay, and this side right here is to show y'all how much share, likes, views we had. Also, you can see that our TikTok page, we made over 3,000 views, 800 likes, and 100 share. In our Instagram stories, we had over 1,000 views and 500 people we met in the universities. So yeah, next slide.
This is just show you what she was talking about. Next slide, please. Wait, this should there you go. By using this wealth of information, we can share with people who are truly patient about the Red Cross and develop active groups of caring people who are patient about assisting and protecting those in need. Next slide, please. Our advice is stay brave.
Communicate. Don't be scared about expressing yourself, your feelings, your opinion.
And spread all the knowledge you have to others so we can build a big and strong community. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you a lot, guys. Thank you.
Have a nice day. We'll pass it to the next.
Hi everyone, we're here to cover the Asia Pacific Division and its IHL YAC campaign. So behind the scenes, this is our team. My name is Juaria, and I'm a rising high school senior from the Northern Coastal California region. This is my first year doing YAC, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have learned and educated on YAC.
Hi, everyone, and my name is Kaylee Ponder. I am representing the North Florida region, and I'm a current senior at the University of North Florida. And this is also my first year doing YAC.
Our third roommate, Timmy, unfortunately cannot be here today, but her name is Sienna Igman, and she's from the Iwakuni, Japan region. And although it's her first year doing YAC as well, she's been an amazing contributor to the showcase and the IHL YAC community overall. She also led Asia Pacific's Agent Red team, which we'll soon learn about more. So just to begin, here's an overview of our presentation. We're first going to dive into the Asia Pacific Division's geography and where our IHL YAC teams are from, and then we'll move into some campaign highlights on events and engagement before we wrap up with some advice for next year and finally conclude our presentation. Here is a map of the Asia Pacific Division, and within this division, we had two active IHL YAC teams, Camp Humphreys from the Korea region and Agent Red from the Marine Corps Air Station Iwakuni. Both teams led impressive campaigns this past IHL year, utilizing both social media platforms and influencing their audience's awareness in person. To start off, let's cover some of the memorable highlights of Camp Humphreys' IHL YAC team. This IHL team of 15 held a series of educational lectures using 4 different countries, Somalia, Ukraine, Myanmar, and the Philippines, to raise awareness on how armed conflict affects the climate. Their audience consisted of mainly JROTC cadets and local high school students. From feedback, they were able to successfully educate them on the 4 core principles of IHL, as well as make connections with political and economic factors from these diverse perspectives. Here are some more images from this team's content, and I love how the theme and creative touches are super engaging. Now moving into the campaign highlights of Team Agent Red from Japan. Agent Red held a series of presentations and events this past campaign, including an Ice Age movie event to draw connections between the melting polar ice caps to the theme of climate change. In addition to the movie, they held Lemonade for Humanity, where attendees could learn from lemonade cups, each holding an IHL fact inside. Agent Red also reached out to its local community through a 15-minute presentation to a youth audience of Girl Scouts. They also included interactive activities such as Lemonade for Humanity again and Spin the Wheel. Another successful event by Agent Red was a pet walk at their community's annual Red Cross event, where they received lots of participation and enthusiasm from each passerby.
And now onto the social media activities. Agent Red did do a few Instagram polls to pertain to the Geneva Convention, asking what a convention is and asking when was the Geneva Convention. Another involved the 7 fundamental principles of the Red Cross / Red Crescent movement. Agent Red they tested people's knowledge on what neutrality is and what the 4th fundamental principle is. They also did polls that quizzed people on the difference between customary international law and international treaty law. They also had 2 polls that tested people's knowledge on what IHL stands for and what it protects. So now we will play a video by Sienna, the division representative for the Asia Pacific Division, on her experience as a military kid and how it connects to this IHL YAC program.
Hello, my name is Sienna Eggman and I am from Iwakuni, Japan, and I am the only military/international representative of this year's IHL program. So being this only representative, it came with its unique experiences. For example, my audience extended to educating military families and military personnel, either in person through events such as the Pet Walk or through radio while being on AFN, which is the American Forces Network. Additionally, it came with its own struggles. The population was smaller and had a limited audience, meaning I couldn't outreach to people living outside the base. And the YAC team aren't as popularized as the ones on base. I only had a team of 3. And it also came with having limited resources. Nevertheless, especially after seeing the summit and seeing the impact this IHL program can make, I truly am looking forward to expanding YAC not only where I live, but to DOD's places all over the world. So thank you all for this amazing opportunity, and shout out to my fellow teammates who are representing Asia Pacific in my absence.
And now for the division statistics. Each region did have a YAC goal to reach. For Japan, the goal was to reach 100 participants, and Korea's goal was to reach 71 participants. Both Camp Humphreys and Agent Red were able to exceed these numbers, with the Japan region reaching 142 participants through 11 events, and the Korea region reaching 73 participants through 6 events. And while both teams were successful with their campaigns, they did experience some challenges along the way. Camp Humphreys' challenges included having members with different availabilities for in-person meetings and feeling unprepared to present lectures. And the Agent Red team, their challenges included having, at the start of the campaign, only 3 members, but also later having 1 drop out and having limited resources to work with and a limited population to reach out to. However, both teams were able to find solutions to these campaign problems. Camp Humphreys decided to hold hybrid meetings to accommodate everyone's schedule. And regarding feeling unprepared, they decided to include speaker notes in their presentation. And for the Agent Red team, they decided to combat the limited resources and population issue by putting more focus on the social media activities. And for good practices, Camp Humphreys realized that instead of assigning the bulk of the work to a battalion commander, it would be better to assign a cadet in a non-leadership position with the major role of managing the campaign. Also, they learned the importance of organization when making announcements and felt that emails were best practice. And they also realized that it is good to save pertinent notes in a Google document. In addition, the team learned the importance of practicing their presentation skills and including speaker notes in presentations. And for the Agent Red team, they believe that planning ahead can help make a campaign successful, and that making adjustments to presentations based on your audience can help as well. Now that we have reached the end of our presentation, we wanted to pose a question to the audience. So please comment in the chat, what are some ways to help spread IHL in your community? And it could also take from what was mentioned in this presentation or in previous presentations, just anything that you guys feel could help bring awareness to IHL. We have someone saying Instagram, definitely. Social media, yep, can help a lot, spread to a lot of people. Civil discussion, yes. Presentations, yep. Yeah, thank you guys for leaving all the comments, putting up a table, doing games. Yeah, thank you all for commenting below, and thank you again for being with us today and hearing about the accomplishments of the teams in the Asia Pacific Division. We will now pass it on to the Pacific Division to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee. Hello, everyone. My name is Natalie Kim, and today my fellow advocates and I We'll be sharing some highlights from this year's IHL Youth Action Campaign from the Pacific Division. So first, we're going to get into some introductions. So hi, everyone. I'm Natalie Kim. I'm an IHL YAC advocate based in Los Angeles, California. And aside from IHL, I also serve as the president of my territory's Red Cross Youth Executive Board.
I'm Julia Huynh. I'm from San Diego, California, and I'm in the San Diego and Imperial Counties chapter.
Hey everyone, I'm Angad from the Central California region in Fresno, California, and I also serve as a youth board member on the Central Valley Red Cross.
Hi everyone, my name is Ginger. I'm from the Cascades region in Portland specifically.
So here is an overview of what we will be going through in today's presentation. So first, we're going to be getting into an introduction of the division, showing you where the Pacific Division is. We will then move on to statistics, showing the total number of campaigns and engagement done throughout the Pacific Division. We'll move into campaigns, highlighting some of the events and interesting new ideas that were presented this year. And lastly, we will end it with advice for future campaigns. So here is our division. As you can see in the red, we are Pacific Division made up of 10 different regions and 9 different states. And these states consist of California, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Alaska, and Hawaii.
So looking at our stats for our division from last year's Youth Action Campaign, we had over 217 YAC events, over 12,854 participants, which exceeded our sub-target goal of 5,409. So a big success for our division last year. And then as a division breakdown on the number of people participated, we had a decent spread of people across all regions, with Southern California region having the most participants of 3,842, and then Los Angeles region having the second most of 2,278. And all these regions added up to a total of 12,854 participants.
Now we will be highlighting some fun YAC events that we saw during this year's campaign. So first, we have Brea Olinda High School, where they did an IHL Easter egg hunt, which was played where participants searched for Easter eggs, and inside the egg they had candy and an IHL fact, and they would read their fact in front of their audience.
And then Del Norte High School also had an Avatar: The Last Airbender and IHL watch party. And Avatar: The Last Airbender is a children's TV show in which there's a 100-year-long war. So we showed clips where the characters were harming the environment, and then we asked the participants how IHL would protect against this happening. And then we also had the participants discuss if the characters, what the characters did was against IHL. So even though they were debating about something as small as like the cabbage merchant, they were still learning about applicable lessons.
So at Clovis North High School in Fresno, California, they'd had an IHL presentation with a Kahoot game and a Q&A session. And so this presentation helped reinforce the principles of IHL to our peers and explain how armed conflict damages the environment and how international humanitarian law protects it. And so we had many guest speakers and a panel of presenters who helped ask and answer questions to the audience to help create an interactive atmosphere for the youth. And this presentation was able to bring in over 55 youth members, and over 10 students asked questions about IHL. And then toward the end of the presentation, we had a Kahoot game so that we can assess our peers' knowledge in a fun way. And so the next event that we did was an IHL Global Workshop. And this was hosted by IHL in the Bay and Humanity Exists Everywhere. And it was a collaborative event with teams all over the United States. And it consisted of 2-hour sessions over a 2-day period. And the main goal was to explain IHL and the environment in relation to pop culture, such as like a movie or a TV show. And we also had a keynote presentation to discuss IHL with Red Cross legal advisor Thomas Harper. And then at the end, we played a game, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, so that we can assess our peers' knowledge of IHL.
And here are some other fun activities that happened in our division during the campaign. At LA County High School in California, there was a candy giveaway, and they discussed IHL facts and this year's campaign theme, and they had over 410 participants. Next, at Chaminade High School in California, there was an IHL booth at lunch during Earth Week, which included an Earth Week Kahoot. And finally, at Sunset High School in Oregon, there was a social media campaign for IHL, which also discussed IHL in general and Red Cross facts.
So as a division, we faced a lot of challenges, and we have some advice to give to later campaigns. First of all, it's really important to plan effectively. Allowing for extra time gives people more time to get back to you for potential presentations, to get clearance for things, and in case anything goes wrong. Additionally, if you get started earlier rather than later by planning meetings with everyone, you'll have more time. And one of the challenges we faced was engagement, and participants would often not be really engaged in like a boring presentation. And how we dealt with this was thinking of out-of-the-box activities, like maybe people our age would enjoy, like TikToks, trivia questions, or tying in pop culture. And finally, our last piece of advice is collaborate. We can collaborate with other schools, other clubs at your school, other Red Cross clubs, or other community organizations to plan more events and have more engagement. And now we're going to have a little quiz on what we covered. Next slide, please. So how this is going to work is just drop whatever letter you think the answer is in the chat. And the question is, how many views did our division have approximately? A, 1,000, B, 500, C, 12,000, or D, 5,000? And the correct answer is C, 12,000. The next question is, what holiday-themed event did we highlight? A, IHL Easter egg hunt. B, IHL Christmas card writing. C, IHL trick or treat. Or D, IHL Thanksgiving drive. I see everyone's writing A. That is the correct answer. And finally, our last question is, what movie/show was Del Norte's event based on? A, Avatar: The Way of Water. B, Avatar: The Last Airbender. C, Pokemon Advanced. D, The Lorax. And the correct answer is B, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Great job to everyone that got these questions right.
Thank you on behalf of the Pacific Division for being here today and listening to our presentation. We'll now pass it on to our wonderful YAC interns.
Excuse me. Hello, my name is Sarah Tabor. I'm a YAC intern. And myself and my, oh, there you are. And my other YAC intern, Miranda, we're going to be going over the virtual events that we did this summer prior to in-person showcase. We also have Arya, another intern. She sadly could not make it today. But yeah, basically before arriving in DC for our in-person summit, where we were at NHQ having a lot of fun meeting each other, we had an entire 3 weeks of virtual events where we got to build leadership skills, meet with one another, learn a lot about this year's past curriculum and the new curriculum coming forward. So the first week we did a lot of welcoming, leadership development, people from general counsel coming to talk to us about empathetic listening, our social media team coming to talk to us about social media, political discourse seminar with government relations. And all of this was super awesome. And I think we all learned a lot from it. Week 2, we began the YAC Summit series, which is the portion of YAC that was open to the public and is available on YouTube. I'm sure we will drop that link in the chat at some point. So we had a view from Congress where John Quirk, a Senate Armed Forces Committee member who works with topics having to do with IHL and the environment in last year's theme, came to speak with us just about that topic, and we had a great discussion with him. We had a leadership boot camp where New Jersey CEO Rosie Taravella led a collaborative leadership seminar, which was really engaging and insightful, and sadly is not on the YouTube as it was a closed event. And then later that week, we had another closed event that was Thomas Harper, our senior legal advisor, coming to talk to us about how to engage audiences, especially when talking about Star Wars. So yeah, that was week 1.
Hi, everyone. I'm Miranda. I'm going to continue talking about some of our virtual sessions that happened before we came to DC. So during week 3, our first session was a session on displacement run by one of our legal interns, Natalie, who talked about the importance of displacement in armed conflict, legal protections for displaced persons, and the role of humanitarian organizations in protecting displaced persons. Then our second event that week was an advanced screening where our advocates and cadets got an advanced screening into the curriculum for this year's upcoming theme of nuclear weapons and armed conflict. Advocates and cadets had the opportunity to go through their curriculum that they'll go through next year, as well as go through some case studies detailing Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Cuban Missile Crisis scenarios, and scenarios involving the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in the Ukraine and Russia conflict. Today, our third event that week was a youth delegate event where some of our youth delegates who had the opportunity to participate in a youth leadership camp in Indonesia discussed their experience and some of the things that they learned. Our fourth event that week was a paper cranes event. This event, participants had the opportunity to learn about the story of Sadako Sasaki, who was 2 years old during the Hiroshima bombing. And she learned the story of the 1,000 paper cranes and had a hope to fold 1,000 of them herself in the hopes of wishing for her recovery from leukemia. Sadly, she died, but our participants got the chance to make their own paper cranes with wonderful demonstrations by some of our advocates and staff. Our last event that week was an event on dead clothing where participants had the opportunity to learn about sustainable fashion from Dr. Lisa Lake, who's a pioneer in sustainable fashion in Australia. Our week before summit, before advocates came to DC summit, to the DC sessions, we had a few events. One was a political discourse briefing. This was closed, but 5 of our advocates and cadets had the opportunity to speak with members of Congress, Red Cross, and various community organizations on the theme of environment and armed conflict. We had a career panel where participants had the opportunity to hear from a panel of professionals in the government world, humanitarian world, and international policy world. And then lastly, our event was National Symposium, where advocates that were not a part of the summit got the chance to present on the amazing things that they did during their campaigns. And our final event was a pop culture event, which we do every year because we love to connect our IHL theme to a movie, TV show. This year's pop culture event featured Captain America: Civil War and Avengers Endgame, and violations of IHL seen in some of the movie scenes. And then week 5 was our DC summit. So on our next slide is a video done by our fellow intern, Arya Patel. She could not be here, so we will hear from her about her internship experience.
Hi everyone, my name is Arya Patel and I'm one of the YAC interns along with Sarah and Miranda. So during my internship, I was mainly focused on the creative aspect since I really like doing like creative projects and designing posts and videos and reels on Canva. So basically what I did was during my internship, I worked on the IHL Instagram at Youth Voices for IHL. So basically, I posted reels, I made posts, and I grew the Instagram following for the Instagram handle. And I want to shout out one of my advocates, Natalie. She made a day in the life of an advocate video, and that reel got over 2K views, and I'm extremely proud of her. And one of the other projects I worked on was the Eye of Humanity podcast. It's an IHL podcast that me, Lily, and Yasmin worked on, and we basically invite we host a podcast, but we invite guest speakers like Larissa. That was our first podcast, and we have some few future other guests that we invited too. And then I made the YAC calendar template, and I also made the YAC yearly template. So basically these two templates, like the calendar will help advocates for next year for the theme with nuclear weapons. If like the calendar will help them incorporate that theme, and like it's like I'll attach it to this video or the next slide. But like the calendar is basically like it will help like the advocates plan for next year, like when to do their event, like which day of the week, and there's like some ideas like listed there of what to post, what not to post, and things like that. And I also collaborated with the National Youth Council to host an IHL crash course. So I just reached out to the National Youth Council, and I just emailed the crash course lead, and I was like, can I do a crash course? And they said yes, and I did that during my early time frame of my internship. And I also did a takeover on the National Red Cross Youth Instagram account, and that was really fun to do. And that's all I did for my internship, and I hope you will become an intern also.
All right, that was great. I'm so glad she could kind of be here, even though she's not actually. So this is what Aria was talking about, what she worked on essentially the entire year. So the calendar and everything she said, this is just an example of it that we will have access to in the coming years. Good resources. All right, so this is my slide about my intern experience. So I guess I didn't really introduce myself. So I'm Sarah. I'm a rising senior currently living in McLean, Virginia, just outside of DC. Although last summer I came to Summit as an advocate representing the Europe division. At that time, I was living on a military base in Stuttgart, Germany. This is my second year with the YAC program, and I'm super excited to be here. My intern experience is a little bit different than Aria and Miranda's. I came onto the team in May, whereas they came onto the team just after Summit last year, maybe like in August. And I came on just because of the connections I had stuck with throughout my junior year of high school, which eventually gave me this position. So starting in May, I was diving headfirst straight into Summit preparations. I revamped the welcome packet. I made certificates. I helped to plan some food stuff for in-person. And I did much, much more just supporting the team as we, promoted this entire national event. I had the opportunity to see up close and personal exactly how much work goes into such a massive event happening. During Summit, I sent a whole lot of emails, took a whole lot of pictures, and did a whole lot of attendance. And you can kind of see, that's why I put those icons there. During the in-person DC portion, I continued with the pictures and the keeping people on track, sending emails, but I was also privileged to be able to experience amazing opportunities along with the advocates. I went to the State Department with them, heard from senior leadership, got to meet like all of these people who had only been on like little computer screen boxes come to life in their, complex and rich personalities, which is so amazing and such an interesting experience. So the biggest question that I sort of wanted to cover from my intern experience is the continuation after Showcase. Where do we go from here, basically? And I feel like this is something we were all sort of forced to reckon with throughout Summit. And a lot of the things we heard made us think about this, at least in my own experience. So all of us, advocates, cadets, legal interns, YAC interns, IHL interns, youth delegates, and all of the youth and young adults that are truly the foundation of this organization, or the next generation of the Red Cross, as we've heard so many times in the past month, are thinking about what this truly means. What is the next generation of the Red Cross? How do we work to empower and engage our classmates, convince them that something as seemingly obscure as IHL is something that truly affects them and is truly something they should care about? How do we bring the mission of the Red Cross into our daily lives and into our communities? I don't really know the answers to these questions, but I do know the power that we as youth hold solely in our engagement with this program. And to me, it only makes sense to keep going, keep taking the photos and emailing people and bringing IHL into the discussion in class, on social media, wherever in your community you feel it fits, or maybe where it doesn't. Essentially, just we don't stop here. And there's a lot more coming for us, and that's just so exciting to me. Each of us has had the privilege to witness what we've all witnessed over the past year with this topic, these leaders in this organization, and a new curriculum is just waiting for us around the corner. And I'm really, really excited. So that's my spiel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Miranda Surrett, and I'm a YAC intern along with Aria and Sarah. I'm currently a sophomore at Salisbury University studying public health and international studies. Like Sarah, I came to Summit last year as a sole representative from overseas. I came from the Asia Pacific region where I was living on Camp Humphreys at the time. Like Sarah said, my internship position started immediately after Summit. I dived headfirst into making JROTC contact lists to help us expand our outreach to that community and get them more involved in the YAC program. I designed the flyer for our Clara Barton essay and art competition. So if any of you participated in that, the flyer you saw I made. And then I also had the opportunity to do a refresh on our IHL materials that detail what IHL is, what YAC is, and how youth can get involved. And to me, working on something that not only has a local impact, but is seen globally, definitely showed me just how much of an impact you can have being an intern and being an advocate. And when it came time to plan the summit in July, I had the opportunity to be a part of the selection committee. So I got to read all of your wonderful answers and see all of the wonderful things that you guys were doing. And it inspired me so much because our youth are doing so much. And aside from helping select the participants for Summit, I had the opportunity to gather all of the necessary information needed to book all of the flights and keep all of that information together so we knew when people were arriving and when people were leaving. So I also used Excel quite a lot too. During the in-person summit, my fellow interns and I were tasked with checking everyone in when they arrived, leading the welcome session, making announcements after every meal so everybody knew what they knew where they needed to be at any given time. We also, I don't know if you all saw in the chat, but Sarah, Ari, and I led Summit entirely. We pretty much did everything. But seeing Summit and seeing the wonderful team of adults and youth that we have, it really showed me how important a team is in planning an event. So for any of you out there for next year, my advice to you is have a team. It definitely helps. One thing I wanted to say and I wanted to end with is a story. I wanted to end with a story and a challenge for all of you. I went to a forum and I was asked by a representative of the ICRC whether or not I thought the IHL program is going to be long lasting. And my answer to her was yes, because I've seen the youth and I've seen what you guys do and how the awareness that you spread about IHL and rules of war makes so much of an impact. And I want you all to know that all of the Red Cross leadership are so appreciative of everything that you do and how much of an impact you really make. So know that the leaders from the very top are so appreciative of what you all do on this for everyone on this call. And my challenge to you guys is to continue being passionate about IHL so that our program and the important lessons that go with it can continue beyond all of us and can be long lasting. So I want to thank you all, and I'm going to turn it over to Anvesha, our wonderful Q&A facilitator, to facilitate some questions.
All right, so thank you so much to everyone for staying on the call. We do have a couple questions. So the first question is, any tips for social media outreach? So social media was a big part of almost all of the campaigns this year. I think one of the most important factors is to first make sure that people have access to your social media. So getting your handle out there, making sure people know that you have an Instagram or that your IHL chapter has an Instagram is really, really important, because that's where they're going to interact with it. And then once you've kind of established your Instagram, I think it's also important that you make your Instagram interactive. So a really good example of that was Shalu. She had her 20 days of IHL on her Instagram. That's a great way to keep your audience engaged, right? Because they're looking forward to each day. So that's a really good example. Another example, a couple campaigns did do quizzes on their stories. That's also a great way. And then making sure that you're advertising any sort of events that you're holding within the community, whether they're in person or online, can also be a great way to just keep your Instagram active. Instagram, or I think Instagram was the main platform that all of us used. I know Kaylee, who presented on behalf of the Asia Pacific region, did use LinkedIn. So that's also a great way to, there are so many platforms that you can use. So really use those resources and have fun with it. So that would be kind of a generalized response. I think that's all the questions we have right now. So yeah, I will go ahead and pass it back then.
Just want to thank all of you. I saw so many hearts and claps. You all, just like everything else we started at the beginning of this, is youth led, and it was just amazing. You all did such an awesome job, and you can tell for our guests that are spending time with us today, this team became even stronger of a team even throughout this process of figuring out how they were going to navigate working virtually. You heard some representatives were supporting other divisions they're not a part of. And I think that's the humanitarian spirit that we all just really want to instill and are inspired by all of you. So I want to thank you all for joining us. We are happy to stick around if anyone has any personal questions or anything else, that we're happy to stay on. This whole team, Avisha, thank you for being our facilitator, but all of us here are happy to help you all grow your IHL Youth Action Campaign programs and experiences. So thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you next year.